Hey guys, Joker the Fool here, and this is the 15th episode of Poll Review, I believe. I do the daily poll on the EG forum. It's all unofficial, but and every week, Tuesday, Wednesday or so, I go through the last 7 daily polls. I go through why I posted them, the subject, and the results and your replies below. So without further ado, we're going to jump right into it and start with daily poll 99. Will Square Enix show gameplay for their Avengers game at E3? And obviously, we saw Square Enix's show. They didn't show gameplay for the Avengers game. They just showed us some cutscenes, which doesn't really give me a good impression of what the game will actually be like. But that's neither here nor there. We'll go and look at the results. And 13 votes, or 72%, don't care about an Avengers game. 5% won't. 5% say we won't see an Avengers gameplay at E3. 11% say that we will, and again 11% say that there wasn't enough information for them to decide at the time. And with that out of the way, we'll go to the first reply from Star Magician, who doesn't care in the slightest. Kind of wish Square Enix would just avoid and ignore Western IPs and trends forever. They make better games when they do. And I mean, I don't think that's necessarily wrong. I can't think of any Western games that Square Enix develop in-house as an example of that, but this is being developed by Eidos Interaction, so it's just published by Square Enix, so there's that. But if you're thinking about maybe stuff like Mind Jack, which I think was Square Enix, and that was very Western or Western inspired, and that was pretty bad, but I can agree with you there. But this is Eidos Interactive, same studio that made Tomb Raider. They're making this game as well, so hopefully it'll turn out and be pretty good, but I don't know. I haven't seen any gameplay, and it could always end up being a bad game. We've got Twidget, who says if it looks any good and the gameplay is there, he may get interested. If any politically correct viewpoints are pushed, not interested. For now, he doesn't care, which I think you gotta agree. I mean, a lot of this is this game is going to be the story, the characters, and then the gameplay. And Marvel's track record in the past, I'd say year or so, probably a bit longer than that, has been pretty bad in terms of how far they've steeped themselves into the political sides of things. But I don't want to really get into that. We're going to move on to the 100th daily poll, which is, do you buy GOTY or Game of the Year editions? And this is just one that randomly popped into my mind, as usually does. It was same with the last poll. I was trying to do an E3 related poll, and then just came into my mind. So we'll just go to the results, and 22% haven't bought any Game of the Year editions. 4% bought one, 4% have bought two, and 4% have bought three, and then 66% have bought more than 3 Game of the Year editions. And I initially said one, but I think I got Borderlands, Batman, Arkham Asylum, and then maybe one more. I can't remember too well. But we'll move on to the replies, and the first reply is from TurnicMan228, who says Game of the Year editions, in his opinion, are the smart way to buy games, and I do agree. You agree with that statement. You get to buy the game after all the reviews, all the impressions, a lot of gameplay is out, all the patches to fix the game, and then all the DLC that make it a complete product. And then if you wait a few months after that GOTY edition or the complete edition comes out, then you can pick it up for a pretty cheap price, and you get the whole thing, which is pretty cool. So we're going to move on to Ragman, who has a really good, pretty long response. He says that he's learned over the years to not fall for the fear of missing out marketing, exploit hype trains, and save his money. And he says plays a lot of single player games, so there's not too much reason to care about missing out when it's just single player games. And then he says most mainstream releases, he says, are deliberately sliced to bits to sell you more crap, not to mention microtransactions and other over monetized schemes. Gotti editions actually allow you to get the whole thing, so he can definitely wait. He considers very few AAA games to even be worth it on the release date at full price. Frankly, for indie games, it's different though. Most of those he's interested in are priced pretty fairly, and if they're really good, he's got no problem buying them at a full price shortly after release. Wants trusted reviewers to cover them, and I do think Ragman's right on the money here. A lot of AAA games these days are just like incomplete projects, broken at launch. It's better to wait for those patches to the original game, for the DLC to come, and then you get that one cheap bundle after you've seen the reviews and everything, and then it's been discounted heavily. So there's that. There's that essentially. And I did see some replies saying like, well, if I'm not interested enough to buy a game at or close to launch, then I'm probably just never going to buy it. And maybe I'll buy a Gotti edition if like sort of interested in it, and then it's like a year later, and then it's out, all the DLC, it's for like 50, 40, whatever amount of money, I'll pick it up. I think that was the attitude of a lot of people. A lot of the other replies, which leave a link to all the polls I talked about, do with every video, every poll review, so you can check those out and anything in the replies and any of the other polls. But we're going to move on to the 101st daily poll, which is, do you buy season passes? And on the previous one to this, the Game of the Year edition one, Trout said it would be better to do a daily poll on season passes, and I decided to do it because I didn't have any other ideas, and it was a really good idea. So thank you, Trout, for that idea. Really appreciate it, and the results are pretty interesting. 40% of you guys never bought a season pass, 25% bought one, 11% have bought two, 5% have bought three, 17% have bought more than three. So a pretty interesting split. I say people are pretty down, pretty conflicted about it, and I can agree with not buying season passes especially if you're cautious about pre-ordering things or you don't want to pre-order anything. Season pass is just pre-ordering DLC, and once they've got your money for the base game, they've got even less of a reason to deliver on the season pass that they sell you. So there is that. But we'll move on to the replies. Cousin Ed says he's bought a few, but he usually waits for Steam sales to get DLC when it's cheap. If the game has a lot of DLC, he'll definitely wait for the Steam sales, but if only has one or two DLCs, he'll buy them. He got the season pass with Ace Combat 7 because he bought some kind of special or deluxe edition on Steam. Yeah, that happens. That happens a lot. I got the deluxe edition of Civilization 6, and I purposely got that for the DLC, but there are deluxe editions where they'll bundle in a season's pass, and uber mega editions will have like all the DLC, all the like some pre-order skins and those sorts of things. I pre-ordered Doom Eternal's Collector's Edition. That's one of the things that comes with like all the DLC, which is usually just like maps for it. They said that I think there might be some campaign DLC, but I really just didn't care. I got the pre-order that through Amazon, so I don't have to pay it until like November. Just for that helmet, really, and the cool box that'll come in, I'm sure. But that helmet seems like it'll be really cool if it's an actual helmet. I don't want to get. Hopefully, I won't get canvas bagged. Let's hope they don't have a shortage of helmet parts like they did with canvas. The canvas shortage is still going on apparently. So we've got Trout. So that he gave me the idea for this post. So he's got a. So I figure it's wouldn't be right if I didn't feature his comment into this episode of Poll Review, and he's thanks me for the mention. Thank you for the idea, Trout. The only season passes he's gotten were Steam gifts. His thoughts could be summarized simply in so Elder Scrolls Oblivion was sold with a season pass option. For those who don't know, the first DLC just added armor to horses at the cost of $5, and developers got no end of shit for it at the time. My first Elder Scrolls game was Skyrim. Really loved it. Played it for hours and hours on the 360. But I think this is what people cite as like it's just $5 for the horse armor. It's not too bad. And then it progressively got worse and worse to like, the DLC's locked on the disc. The game didn't. The DLC's locked on the disc. To the DLC's locked on the disc, and that's half of the game that you have to pay for. And then it's like, here's loot boxes here's loot boxes with so low chances, and that only last for a week. That's the point that we're at, where FIFA will run an event for like 10 days. You'll have less than 1% of a chance to get the thing that you actually want, and you only have 10 days to get it. So spend, spend, spend. And that's where we're, so that's the slippery slope we fell to with DLC. Like the concept of it being like, I've got the base game. I've got a base game which is complete and full, and I love it. And then here's some DLC to add on to top of that, and that's good. So that's my opinion with DLC. Is that as long as you ship a good full base game, I don't care what you do with the DLC. You can make really good DLC, and I buy. You can make really bad, overpriced DLC, and I won't. I got, like, one example is, like, there's Fire Emblem Echoes, which is a 3DS game, and it had a season pass that was more expensive than the game, which is really, really stupid, in my opinion. But the base game of Echoes is really, really good, and, in my opinion, for $40, it was a full game. You didn't really need to buy anything else, so that DLC was like, oh, I've got the full game I can play. I don't really need to buy that uber expensive season pass anyway. And that's my DLC policy, like, internally. If it's different for you, if you agree or disagree with me, that is absolutely fine. That's just how I feel about it. But we're going to move on to the 102nd daily poll, which is, are you going to watch an E3 live stream? And I initially said one. I said I was going to watch Nintendo's, and that was it. So I ended up watching Nintendo. Well, Nintendo's, obviously, I really, really liked that one. That was an A+ for me. I watched Ubisoft, which is like a C+. Watch Dogs Legion was interesting, but I think it's going to be snake oil pretty much. I watched Bethesda's, which was absolute garbage. I'll probably make a whole video just complaining about that, and I'll get it out during E3 time, so I can get like 15 views instead of like 5 that my videos usually get. And then I watched Devolver Digital's, which is always like, it's more of like a joke thing, so I don't like seriously grade it. I don't like seriously grade it compared to the others, but it was really fun. Like all of them are, all the Devolver Digital's ones are really fun. Tomorrow's unethical business practices today, and they parodied the direct format, which was really, really funny. But we're going to move on to the results. 44%, almost half of the people who vote in this poll don't intend to watch any E3 live streams, and I completely understand. 17% will watch 1, 12% will watch 2, 6% will watch 3, and then 19% will watch all the streams. So I'd say pretty split. And we'll move on to the replies. We've got Wicked Wolf, who says, nah, Twitter will cover E3 for me. And this is a sentiment that I saw a lot in these. This is a sentiment I saw a lot in a lot of replies, saying like, oh, I'll watch some YouTuber that I like, and they'll summarize the, all the events for me, or I'll watch, or I'll read a Reddit thread that compiles anything, or, I think Thomas JCG, he made a whole long thread on the EG forum, like the news section, talking about, but just like listing all the game releases, giving you like a trailer link, and then like the basic, like a little sentence splurge about it, and then release date, which was pretty interesting. I'll link to that. I'll link to that forum thread as well, so you can check it out, because it's pretty good. Probably took him some time to compile and get all looking nice. So we're going to move on to the second reply, which is from Lehran. He says, it's normally pretty good for the cringe factor. I probably won't catch them live though, and the cringe factor is really it's funny, but it's not like I don't know, like EA had a good amount of it this year, especially with Greg Miller. Like, I didn't watch it, I just watched some edits of like the fun stuff, and I watched the Fallen Order gameplay, and that's all I really cared about. Like, I don't give a shit about FIFA, I don't give a shit about Madden, I don't give a shit about Battlefield anymore. Battlefield 1 is like the last Battlefield game. That and Bad Company 2, oh man, I played Bad Company 2 so much back in the day. But that aside, yeah, it's probably like EA is always really cringy. Bethesda's was really cringy, but it wasn't like, it was just, I'm not even, well, some of it was pretty cringy, right? Because you had this fake audience clapping at literally fucking everything, and a lot of it was just boring. Like, it was just hard to watch. It wasn't like, oh, it's a train wreck and it's funny. Like, I don't know, like like the stuff that happens at EA does, or like I don't know, like 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 the Wii demos back in the day or something like that. It was just boring. Like they weren't really showing much. It was just cinematic after cinematic, mobile game, two mobile games. In fact, two mobile games, or like updates to existing games. Like they spent like so much time on Fallout 76, and granted, the NBC update might get me back in a battle royale mode. That's fucking stupid, but whatever. So we are going to move on to the 103rd daily poll, which is have you used a non-traditional controller? And I got some criticism on this one for the title, for the question being weirdly phrased, and I think I don't know. I think this poll is a bit of a weird one, but I did have a different one, but I ran into the title limit, so I changed it to this, which it's clear cut enough, I think. And I just wanted to acknowledge that if a question's weirdly phrased or something like that, it's probably me trying to adhere to the character limit, or it could just be me genuinely making a bad question, which does happen at times. I've come up with I've come up with plenty of bad polls. I know I've got over 100 now, so some of them are bound to be duds, and in the future I'm going to have some duds as well, but that's just the way the world works. So this one's pretty definitive. 82% played more games with traditional controllers more than non-traditional ones. 8%, I said 82, right? 82% more traditional than non-traditional. 8% played games with non-traditional controllers more than traditional ones, which I was interesting that I got like a response from that at all. That answer at all, and then 8% only play games with traditional controllers. And we are going to move on to the replies. The first one is from Hopeless Wombat, who says the Wii Zapper, the Move controllers, and the PSVR, the Guitar Hero Live controller, the PlayStation Aim, the Fight Stick, the 3DS, PlayStation Vita gyroscope, the 3DS and PlayStation Vita gyroscope stuff, which is aiming and Ocarina of Time 3D, super good. Never played Ocarina of Time 3D. I did play Majora's Mask 3D, and I did play Majora's Mask 3D, and the same thing applies. Like the gyro aiming, and that's really good as well. So gyro aiming is good on console, where you're using a stick, and the stick isn't that good to aim. It's not as good as a mouse, but gyro is the next best thing. And then he finishes off by saying he had a joystick. Samus had a joystick for some sort for Windows 95 when he was little. Don't even remember what game it was supposed to be for. So that's pretty interesting. A pretty good amount of controllers that aren't standard. But a fight stick in the fighting game world is the standard, basically. But it's not standard for like the average gamer. So we've got Necromancer X69 who says besides the normal mouse keyboard and Xbox One controller for PC use. For PC use and a PlayStation 2 controller. Here's his list of weird stuff he used. The Sega Dreamcast controller. The VMU makes it a lot different from common controllers, which I can agree with that. The Dreamcast came out the year I was born, so I wasn't really around for that. For any of Sega's consoles when they were relevant. Joysticks of all sizes and colors. Wireless PC controllers or wire PC controllers that are not official or common. Keyboards like the Taurus and Nostromo. So there are some really weird keyboards out there, and some of them have a varying degree of usability in gaming. Like a lot of the weird keyboards are designed, to either make typing more comfortable or make typing better for people who are, say nice thing, have intellectual disabilities, autism or something like that. There's a lot of weird, just like going to YouTube, type in weird keyboards, you'll see some pretty wacky stuff. Keyboard, so it says then the Reality P5 gaming glove, the Zalman FG 1000 FPS gun, which was, he says, it's found fun mouse to use for a while till it died 4 or 3 months for cheap. It died after 4 or 3 months for cheap material. Still not worth it. Just stick to a regular mouse. Guitar Hero for the PS2. I yeah, I played Guitar Hero on the 360, and I played Rock Band. And I used the drums, and the Beatles Rock Band was really fun. I had the drums. I was basically Ringo. The Philips Freaks pad, fleshy, and then so in the end, he always used more mouse and keyboard. Yeah, I stick to mouse and keyboard or controllers. That's basically what I've been gaming on for the most part. I've used a Wii a few times. I've got Skyward Sword on my Wii U, but I've barely played that game. But we're going to move on to the 104th daily poll, second to last. And Google had this Stadia Connect, I think that was what it was called. And a few days before E3 officially began, to get like all the Stadia information out. And I was initially really conflicted on this. But now I've had some time to think of it. I don't think it's a good value. And I don't think really either if you're a casual or a core gamer. Like, if you're a core gamer, it's not going to appeal to you because you already have a PC or console or both, and you can play games locally. You already have this big game library, so Stadia is basically no use for you. Because, you have to pay $10 a month, and then you have to buy games on top of that. So, that's extremely weird. And for casuals, if you're going into this thinking it'll be the Netflix, of games, which is what, a lot of people want it to be, and that's what it needs to be to get into the casuals. Well, you say, well, I'll pay the $10 a month and I'll get access to all these games, but you don't. You get access to buy, in quotation marks, buy. Well, you get to buy them, but, you don't really get to own them. Like, the ownership you have over Stadia games is going to be even less than Steam, GOG, but I'll get into that later. So, so casual is going to be offset by the prices of, of the price of entry. And then also, like, there's concerns about data caps and data speeds, because a lot of people, they either got data caps that are, they've got data caps that, they only have a certain amount of data a month. They can't go over that. And so, they've got to use the internet for, all the other stuff that they do, and it's hard enough for them to keep under the data cap. I don't have a data cap with my ISP. It's Verizon. Live in a place where there's competition, so that's pretty good for me. But a lot of Americans, they only got one ISP, or they got two ISPs owned by the same company. So, it's not quite there yet. And then, so there's that most people are going to be thinking about when trying to buy into the service. And then, I said this before, the cost of entry. So I think a lot of the things what's really keeping a lot of, what keeps a lot of people out from gaming is the high cost of entry. And with Stadia, it's still there. $10 a month, you got to buy the games as well. I mean, if the games are cheaper, then maybe, but I hope they would be. But I have an expectation that they're going to be full price. That's just me, and they probably will be. If, because Google is probably all high and mighty, thinking, oh, we'll just come in, we'll do streaming, everyone will buy it, everyone will love it, we'll make all the money. That's basically how I think that's how they feel, the arrogance about it. And, okay, and there's no way to buy the controller separately, which is really weird, because, you could already have a Chromecast. You could already have a Chromecast Ultra. You're like, well, I don't want another one. I don't need another one, but I want that. Cool controller. Why can't I just pre-order that? I'm sure some people are thinking of that, and that's the whole thing. So the results are pretty simple. 70% of you guys think Stadia Pro is a bad value. 29% think there isn't enough information for them to decide. And then nobody thinks that Stadia Pro is a good value, which I think is pretty obvious why it really isn't. But if you think it is, that's absolutely fine. Repentance Guy says, nope, it's absolute garbage. If you aren't on Wi-Fi, you see it like crazy at 4K. With literally his mobile data in an hour. Nothing like that is worth it, especially since you don't actually own anything you get. Also, the Stadia controller is worthless at that price. Google would seem to think it can't bang on its name. Google seems to think it can bang on its name alone to make money off of Stadia, and it can't. Their service is likely going to die without exclusives, or the same way Epic does it. for the same way Epic does it, because it's worthless without Wi-Fi. So, Repentant Sky, I think there are some Stadia exclusives. I know there is a Stadia development studio. I think that's what it's called, whatever it's called. At the first Stadia, at the Stadia reveal event GGC, they said that they have a game dev studio, ran by, I think, the woman who was originally running EA Motive. And before that, she made the Mighty Quest for Epic Loop, which was an old online Ubisoft game. I think it went defunct in 2015, but I remember playing that. It was pretty fun. So, I've seen, she's been able to make good games in the past, from what I can tell. So maybe she'll make something good on Stadia that will be worth buying into, but will it be worth $10 a month plus buying the game, plus having to deal with the inherent issues of streaming games? Because I was a Project Stream tester. I played Assassin's Creed Odyssey on Project Stream. I got into it. I got accepted to it for some reason, and I played it for a good bit. I played it I think I played total 3 hours of it, and it wasn't terrible, but there was definitely, it was definitely a beta service, so it'll probably be better in the full release. But there was times where it was literally unplayable for me. Or there was a lot of artifacting, or my inputs wouldn't read, it was dropping frames. But most of the time it was actually pretty decent. I was having a good bit of fun with playing the game. But I wouldn't, I would say I've got the game locally now. I haven't played it too much, but it's definitely better when it's local. And I will probably jump into that game more when I get my new PC, because I think my laptop's chugs a little bit when I run that game. But that's just that. We are going to move on to 80's reply. He's quoting Star Magician's post, which says, "If you don't own anything you pay for, there's no value to be had." 80 says, like Steam, and I know 80 is definitely a bit of a dissenter, which is fine. Doesn't like a lot of the mindset on the EG forum, which in some ways I can agree with that a little bit. But I try to be a pretty neutral guy. I don't want to be. I don't want to be insulting anybody on this the forum at all. I want everyone to try and get together, talk about games. That's why we're all on the EG. That's why we're all part of this exclusively games community, whether it's the forum, Discord, or just reading the articles. That's what the people are here for. But being savvy aside, I do have to disagree with you, 80. Not in the sense that not in the sense of that you own games on Steam or Epic or Origin or Uplay or Battle.net or whatever service with DRM. I agree with you on that. If one day Valve felt like, they felt like, I was a hindrance to their platform or whatever, they could delete my account, take away all my games, my 100 or so games, thousands of dollars. I'd lose it all. It's same thing with any other company. Same thing with my digital games on my PlayStation, my digital games on my Switch, on the Wii U and the 3DS and whatever. They could just snap their fingers, take it away from me. That is DRM, right? It's consistent in the games, it's consistent with movies, it's consistent with music. So I will agree with you on that DRM, you don't really own your games. But with Stadia, you're not buying a game, you're buying server space. You're essentially buying a server space to stream, one specific thing. So if Steam were to, close down, they've got a protocol so that way you can download all of your games and play them. A lot of people probably don't have enough hard drive space to do that, but for the people who do, and hopefully I'll be in a position by the time that'll happen, and hopefully it doesn't happen for a long time, but it probably will at some point. But I'll be able to download the games locally, hopefully, and then I'll be able to have them, and Steam will exist. If Google Stadia goes away, if it's gone, and Google decides it's not good for the company, or Google goes down or whatever, then how do you get your games that you paid for, all that money back? You don't. You just lose it because you're just renting server space. And if your internet goes down, if Google servers go down, then you can't play your games. With Steam, if the Steam servers go down, that's not the best thing. I can't really play online games that use the Steam functionality, but I can at least play games, play Steam games offline. I've done it before. It's perfectly possible thing to do. Um, it's perfectly possible for me to do. For most people, you can just set it in offline mode, play all your games that you have locally downloaded, and you're fine. With Stadia, if your internet goes out for like a couple hours and your power's still on and you want to play some games on your computer, you can't do that. No internet connection. You could use a mobile hotspot, I guess, but it's you might have a mobile data limit, like Repentant Sky had said in the last comment. So if your internet goes out and you got Steam games, you're fine. If you've got Stadia games, well, you're fucked. So I do agree with the sentiment that DRM has taken away ownership for a lot of things. Basically taking away ownership. You've got less rights. It's digital rights management, managing your ownership. Basically, it's non-existent. Agree with you there, but I think you have to agree that Stadia gives you less ownership and less control over your software than Steam, Uplay, Origin, and Epic do. I think you have to. I think that's something that we can both agree on, and you can agree on with the other members of the forum that you don't seem to like. But that's a big old rant. So we're going into the last daily poll for this poll review. That was a bit of a long rant, but I had a lot to say about that. Daily poll 105 is Blizzard making an Overwatch 2, and basically there was some news that came out that the StarCraft FPS that was in development for 2 years got canceled, and the rumor that came from that story was that more development resources were going to go to Diablo 4, which is a good thing, perfectly believable, and then in Overwatch 2, which I find to be a bit less believable, because I'm not sure, if you're thinking about, short-term gain, you can definitely get that with a sequel, but the long-term gain that I think something that Blizzard's trying to build with the Overwatch League. I mean, what happens to the Overwatch League if Overwatch 2 comes out? I mean, it seems like it's just full of wrench into an already established community, the already established esports scene that's already doing poorly enough, along with the game's player counts. So I just don't think I think in the long term, an Overwatch 2 would kill the franchise. That is just how I personally feel. But let's get into the results in terms of what you guys think if this game actually exists. 8% say there's enough information for them to decide. 70% don't care about Overwatch. 12% think there will be an Overwatch 2. 8% think that there won't be. And we'll go on to the replies, and we've got Justins, who says Blizzard needs a big cash infusion, so they're going to sequel a property that's already doing fine on its own. Will their transparent, weak plan work? Probably in the short term, but they already lost him as a customer. The moment they shacked up with Activision, it's not worth it to support these clowns. And really, at this point, I do agree for the most part that I don't know, that it really isn't worth it. I don't really play Overwatch too much anymore. Diablo 4, I doubt it'll be a good game. I don't think Activision has any interest in making good games anymore. They want to make stuff that'll sell. So Call of Duty might end up being decent. The new one, Modern Warfare, might end up being decent, maybe, but I imagine that campaign is going to be like 6 hours at the most. It's not worth buying for $60. And the multiplayer is just going to be riddled with microtransactions, which is going to ruin the whole thing for me. And we're going to move on to Musou Tensei, who says, yes, he thinks there will be a new game. He couldn't care less about the IP, though. So I played 330 hours of Overwatch. I think a lot of my points still stand. I could be wrong. I'm always willing to accept that I'm wrong, but I think if anyone of any sense said, it's either we get the short-term benefit of a new IP, that launch, that hype that surrounds it, and then a bunch of initial sales, but over time, we're going to anger the existing Overwatch player base. The Overwatch esports scene is going to be put into a bit of it's going to be in a bit of disarray. And I'm sure you'll get some players who might leave the game if it's radically different from the original one. You've already got a lot of professional players who dropped the game years ago because they hated the meta, and that was years ago. And from the public opinion of Overwatch players, people don't like the meta. People don't like the game, and a lot of people don't like the gameplay. And I saw this in this Reddit. I was talking about the people don't care for the gameplay. They think it's unfair, and basically every character that's been added, since has been added since like 2017. It's been overpowered or broken, and the updates don't make any sense. And this is this has been for well over a year that people are complaining about it. So I think that any resources spent on Overwatch 2 should be spent on trying to make Overwatch a better game. But that is what I think. You can tell me what you think in the comments below. If you liked the video, you can give that a like. If you didn't like it, you can dislike it as well. And if you want to see more videos in the future, whether it's the next poll review I upload or anything else I decide to upload to this channel, you can hit that subscribe button down below. And I got nothing else to say. I've been Joker the Fool. This has been Poll Review, and I hope you guys have a nice day, and I will see you in the next video. Goodbye.